Hello, I'm Mickey Phoenix from Solutions IQ, and I'm here to convince you to have a Sprint Zero in your Agile project. There are a lot of good reasons to have a Sprint Zero before you actually start producing minimally deployable functionality that your customers could really use. The first of those reasons is that maybe you're not sure what you're actually building. Your customer may not have a product backlog, and if you don't know what you're building, you've got to find some time to figure out what it is you're trying to make. You might have to choose an architecture, make the big upfront decisions that really help guide the whole course of the project, as long as you make the right ones. So you better take some time up front and make those big upfront architectural decisions. You could even bring in an expert whose only job was to make the big upfront architectural decisions and then leave, so the team would have to figure out how to work within the architecture they'd been given, whether or not they agreed with it. And finally, you may not have a team yet. If you don't have a team, well, how are you going to have a Sprint 1 without a team? I hear statements like that a lot when people are starting a project. And the problem is that they lead to a Sprint 0 that isn't actually a sprint at all. Because each of those, well, we're not sure, how do we can'ts, point to something missing that's actually an essential part of an Agile project. If you don't know what you're building yet, what you're lacking is a project backlog, a product backlog. And if you don't have a product backlog, you can't do any of the Agile practices like backlog grooming, like picking out the top most important things from the backlog and putting them in a sprint backlog. Until you have a customer who knows what they want you to build, you're just wasting their money calling it Sprint 0 when you can't actually build something because there's nothing to build. What about the need to choose an architecture? Don't we need architecture experts for that? Well, no, that's why we have high-performing teams that are entrusted to make decisions like that. Instead of having an architect come in and decide for someone else the world they're going to be working in for the next 6 months, start with the team. Tell them the product you want them to build, and let them make the architectural decisions. If nothing else, you're guaranteed that the architecture they choose is one that they're familiar with and able to work in, which is not always the case if an architecture expert chooses your architecture for you during your Sprint 0. And what about the last one? We don't have a team yet. If you don't have a team, you're not doing Agile development. No matter what you call it, you're not doing Agile development until you have a team of developers meeting every day in some sort of stand-up or daily scrum where they can get rid of their impediments and talk about their progress and start determining their velocity. So calling this thing that comes before your project Sprint 0 is really very misleading. It makes people think that they should be tracking velocity. For what team? It makes people think that they can safely make architectural decisions. After all, the team, that being your architecture expert, is making them. But if that's not the team that's actually going to be doing the work, it's not an Agile decision. Why do we do Agile? What are the key products of an Agile process? Functionality deployed to the customer, a known velocity so that we can plan adequately for the future, and a team that has combined and coalesced into a working unit of optimal efficiency. A classic Sprint 0 without a team, without a backlog, and without any deployable product to the customer fails on all 3 counts. Instead, if you have a customer who doesn't know what they want yet, yes, work with them. Help them devise a good product backlog. But don't call what you're doing Sprint 0. Agile hasn't started yet. The Agile process starts when your customer has at least some idea of what they want built, and your team is assembled and ready to start collaborating with pair programming, with all the other Agile practices, working together day after day to decide on the architecture and to implement the customer's product in that solution.